to Wake Forest this Saturday. We got a noon kick. Clemson favored by 7. This will be a fun interconference matchup, interdivision matchup, because if you remember correctly, Wake Forest has the belt for that side of the ACC. And Clemson, you better believe they want it back. We'll get to more of that in a minute. But what do you know about Clemson right now? Haven't played a ton of super formidable competition just yet. But the question marks that we had at the beginning of the year are still the question marks we have going forward. Now, Clemson's looked solid offensively. Don't get it twisted. They've looked solid, but we still want to see more progress and more continuity, and even more so, we want to see more points against better competition. That's what we want to see. Will Wake Forest provide that? Remains to be seen, but from a branding standpoint, it's going to whet our appetite there just ever so slightly. Now, the narrative around Clemson right now is, hey, the offense is getting stale. DJU, what is he really doing? I understand he's looked efficient, hasn't thrown over 300 yards. He's not lighting it up. Here's what I'm hearing as it pertains to the Clemson offense. Clemson, through these first few games, has tried to do two things. The first of which is build confidence around their passing game. So not show too much, which is the second thing, but they're trying to sort of get into a rhythm, get DJ Uiagalelei, it's a tongue twister, get him comfortable, allow him to sort of find his rhythm. And then, like I mentioned, that second piece is not show too much. So if it feels like Clemson isn't taking the governor off this thing, it's because they're not. Clemson has a lot more cards they're yet to show. Can you really blame them that they're not showing their cards against Furman? I don't. I don't think you should either. So that remains to be seen. But how much do we see from this Clemson offense against Wake Forest? Because like we talked about, they have the belt. They want to get it back. They're trying to take that thing back. Are they able to open it up offensively? And how much do they go full tilt offensively, I think remains to be seen. Will Shipley has been very quietly cooking. The running back for Clemson has been leading the charge. I'm just fascinated to see the balance that they approach this game with. Even more so, what are they forced to do offensively? Because I think some of that pertains to what Wake Forest does. If Wake Forest scores points, can Clemson answer? The big thing, though, is the Clemson defense. And we'll get to more of this in a minute when we talk about what Wake Forest does offensively. But I think the Clemson front seven, for good reason, is the storyline in this game. Because what do you know about Wake Forest? You probably have visions of that slow RPO. And it's not the normal RPO that you see where they're putting it in the running back's belly, take it out real quick, throw the slant. That's not how they get down. They do the slow mesh, almost to the point where they're at the line of scrimmage. And then at the last second, Sam Hartman gets out of there and throws the ball to whoever it is. As it pertains to Wake Forest, they make no apologies about who they're going to be. They're 93rd in the country in terms of percentage of the time they're running the football, meaning we could take it or leave it. We don't really want to run the football. Maybe they do want to run the football, but they haven't tried to run the football lately, at least. Sam Hartman is back in the saddle. Good to see him healthy and playing football again. When he's on, he's one of the best in the country. One of the most elite arms in the entire USA. So here's the hinge points for me when it comes to this game. Obviously, we kind of know the makeup of Clemson, kind of know the makeup of Wake Forest. Neither program has really played against elite ACC competition. Wake Forest got tested last week against Liberty. But here are the hinge points in this game. Does this become a track meet? And if it does become a track meet, what ultimately would have to happen for that to be the case? If it becomes a track meet, I think Wake Forest is scoring points, obviously. But even more so, that means the receivers at Wake Forest are winning their matchups. Because for all the strengths of this Clemson defense, the secondary has been opportunistic, but also been susceptible to the big play. And Louisiana Tech was an example of that. So do the wide receivers for Wake Forest win their matchups? If it's a track meet, they do. In addition to that, if it becomes a track meet and they're able to win their matchups, that also implies that the Clemson front seven hasn't been able to get to Sam Hartman. Now, that's a very big hinge point. That's a very big if, one that I have a hard time getting on board with. Because going back to that slow RPO, if you want to mesh all the way into the line of scrimmage, well, there's a whole bunch of freak shows on that Clemson line of scrimmage that are ready to eat Sam Hartman up, all right? So those are two very big hinge points. But if Wake Forest does score points, then that means Clemson's got to find a way to answer. And I think we learn a lot about Clemson if that does become the case. Ultimately, when it comes to this kind of game, I think that Clemson's able to just dictate their tempo. I think Clemson's going to take their time, hand the ball to Will Shipley. They feel good about what they have on the line of scrimmage. They're not going to be in a hurry. Sam Hartman, my guy, you got to watch a fair amount of this game because they're going to force Wake Forest to be essentially perfect offensively with what they're going to do possession-wise. I truly believe that. I think it will be one of those things where Wake Forest doesn't see the ball a whole lot. Clemson takes their time. And I also think we start to see the pass game click a little bit for Clemson. So all that's to say, a good test for Clemson. I think they have the attitude going into this game that we still have something to prove. Nobody's buying Clemson stock right now. Poor little old Clemson. We're on the Roy bus. All of that in a bag of chips. You know the storyline. I think Clemson hits their stride. I think they win this game. I like Clemson to actually win this game pretty soundly. The line right now, as we mentioned, is Clemson -7. I think Clemson covers that. I like Clemson 34-21. The Tigers get it done on the road and take back what they feel is theirs. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.